Now, racist behaviour in schools has hit record highs, with more than 15,000 students suspended last year, including 4-year-old kids, toddlers, essentially. Incidents have more than doubled since 2021, including offensive language, physical attacks and race-hate vandalism. Teachers blame COVID, saying time away from school and limited social contact has left many kids struggling to behave and interact properly. Shouldn't you learn this kind of stuff at home anyway? Let's speak with Liz Fraser, parenting author and primary school governor. Good afternoon to you, Liz.
Good afternoon, hello.
Nobody is denying that some children can be racist, and there are some horrendous examples of that where some really quite serious, almost criminal issues have occurred. The bit that grabs the headlines here, of course, Liz, is 4-year-olds. Really?
Well, it does grab the headlines. It's a very shocking headline. Of course, what you have to do then is go behind the headline and have a little bit more of a look at it. And actually, I mean, putting aside the wider picture, which we'll come to, I'm sure, in a minute, you know, why has the number gone up so massively? In fact, the number of children in reception class who are as young as 4, usually 5, who have been sent home from school for racist behaviour, I think was 5 out of 17, over 17,000 in that year, which actually makes a little bit less than 0.03%. So it's 5 kids. It's not like there's hundreds of them, right? So yeah, as you say, it's a great headline, but it's perhaps not really.
Yeah, true, it doesn't. But you are forced to sort of wonder, you know, does a 4-year-old even know what racism is? I mean, unless they've come from a horrendous house where sort of the kind of language that we would typically associate with a racist, unless it's that, or, you know, without knowing the full details, it's hard to realise. But you do have to scratch your head and think, you know, is it really possible for a 4-year-old kid to be ideologically racist?
Well, quite. And I mean, I'm a mum of 4. My youngest is 7. My oldest is, how old is she? 27.
Wow, that's some old age gap you've got going on.
I know, that's why I can't remember.
Yeah.
So, you know, obviously, I mean, you know, I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children of the, you know, go through from birth all the way to nearly 30. And I would honestly say that I've met 0 who are inherently racist at the age of 4. So I would also say, though, that most schools do everything they can not to exclude a child, okay? So I would hope that the 5 instances where this happened, you know, everything else had been tried, you know, this wasn't a sort of a, right, you're going home. Yeah. And as you rightly say, you know, a child who might be thinking that way or behaving that way might come from a family where there are problems, perhaps, and if you send a child home from school, where are you sending them to? Yeah. And what environment are you sending them to? It's a very big step to take. What you said in your introduction there was so important about teachers mentioning COVID and a lack of sort of social interaction, though. And we do know that there is and it was interesting to me that the spike of this, you know, the largest number of children who are being excluded from school for racist type behaviour, I think was in year 10, it said. I think so. They're about 8 to 12, somewhere in that. It was in that age bracket. And if you think about how old those children were during lockdown, they were 4, 5, 6, 7. Very, very important years in learning to integrate. We know they have a lot of behavioural problems, learning problems. You know, it's not an excuse for that behaviour, but it's certainly a very important factor that we have to consider.
Yeah, I'm just looking online. I know looking online isn't always the best place to gauge public opinion. There's always hysteria and hyperbole on all sides of an argument. Who'd have thought it, eh? But nonetheless, you do dip your toe in there every now and again and have a little look. There was a fairly common thread of suggestion that actually we are over describing, if that's the right way, of what racism is. If a child has used the N-word in class, then clearly you would suspend that child and you would have a very serious follow-up as to how this could happen. I was just going to say this, to compare that to the other example where a kid of 8 might have commented on their friend's hair because their hair culturally and racially is a different style. That could be something very innocent, but a teacher in today's world might look at that and go, oh my God, that's on the list.
Yes, of things that I need to look out for.
Yes.
To exclude. Yeah, I mean, let's not use the W word. I mean, this isn't wokeism, perhaps. This is, this is a very difficult decision that needs to be made on a day-to-day basis in different schools in different parts of the country. But you're absolutely right. Although when you said clearly you would exclude a child for using, the N word, I don't know if that is a clearly, actually. Clearly, a conversation has to happen, and clearly this child needs to be spoken with, and perhaps the parents also need to be spoken with. It really is a last resort, sending a child home from school.
I mean, suspend rather than exclude.
Right, okay, yeah, suspend. We can use that in many different ways, I'm sure. But I mean, a lot of head teachers listening to this will know that, in the first instance, the first thing you need to do is make sure the child is in a safe environment, is in a good environment to have this conversation. Sending them home is generally pretty much the worst thing you can do in a situation like that, unless they are a physical danger to other children. And even then, the school is, in theory, a safe and protected environment full of responsible people. That's where a good conversation can happen with the parents. But honestly, there'll be a lot of teachers listening to this, and I'm sure they will not want the take-home message for this to be, teachers are just sending children home, at the slightest sort of thing that comes under a list of racism. I'm sure they are not doing that, and they are taking action that they deem to be, this is the only appropriate action. But yeah, the wider picture is really fascinating. And, why is this happening? Why are the numbers going up? What are the conversations that are not happening? And most definitely, the take-home message is not 4-year-olds are being sent home from school for racism.
True. 15,000 students suspended, I guess, doesn't mean there's 15,000 racist students.
I hope not. No. In fact, was it not 17,000 even, I think?
I think it depends where you want to read the article. Back to social media again, right?
I know, exactly.
So maybe it was 30,000, who knows?
By tomorrow it might be. No, but really, it is odd to me, when all of this conversation is so much more in normal parlance, what are these statistics actually reflecting? Are they reflecting a change in behaviour and attitude? Are they reflecting a change in, rules and regulations, and this is the steps we have to take? Which for me is a much, it's not a more important issue, but it's certainly a big one to look at.
I get it. Listen, Liz, great to have you on. I hope you're able to remember your eldest's birthday, despite not remembering their age. But listen,
you probably just WhatsApped me already. Hi, it's me.
Lovely to have you on with us, though, Liz. Thank you. Liz Fraser, parenting author and primary school governor, and a parent of 4 between the ages of 7 and, did you say 27 or 24? I think 7 and 27, yeah, that is a big gap, because you might think I think a lot of parents go, well, we've got 2. Do we want to go through all that again? That's a whole other issue. In terms of kids being rated, I'd love to know, I'd love to see the list of what the offences were. I would imagine it's wider than just a kind of white versus black issue. It's probably more nuanced than that. It might even go into that area we just talked about, Islamophobia, in the last. That could well be an issue on this. It could be a kid even asking another kid about the colour of their skin. Why is your skin colour different to mine? It could be religious based, again, across all sorts of 15,000 suspended. I can understand why a school might, on that day, if they've had a horrific incident, say to a kid, right, the parent's got to come up, take the child out of school for the rest of the afternoon. But I do agree with Liz that I don't think we want to be suspending or excluding kids for permanency if this is about a kid just needing a dose of education rather than anything else.